Okay, we should be live now. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I'm here today with Forrest, Head of Developer Media at Google Cloud and founder of the Cloud Resume Challenge. So we're here today to share our advice on how to build hands-on cloud skills in 2023. But before we get started, please let us know where you're tuning in from and pop in any questions you'd like us to answer throughout the session. Welcome to the live stream, Forrest. How are you doing today?
Hey, Lucy, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So Forrest, you've had a really interesting career journey so far, and you've made a big impact in the cloud community, not just by creating the Cloud Resume Challenge, but also creating videos, infographics, songs, and other free content for cloud learners. But I'll let you introduce yourself to those who haven't come across you before. So do you want to start by walking us through your career journey and also let us know what got you interested in cloud in the first place?
Sure, Lucy. I think my career is a testament to the fact that you just never know where you're going to end up. And so hopefully that's, encouraging to those of you who may be watching and you're trying to figure out what the shape of your career is going to look like and you feel like you don't have it all held in your head right now. That's okay. I promise you, no matter what you think is going to happen, it's probably not what's going to happen. And that was certainly true for me. So I started my career as a SQL Server DBA. I was a DevOps engineer. I managed teams of engineers at large enterprises that were moving to the cloud. I was a consultant for a while and worked with more startups and enterprises, helping them do that. I've done most of the things you can do as a hands-on cloud and DevOps engineer. And a lot of that was done in the context of the AWS world. So I used to be in what they call an AWS hero. I was actually one of the original AWS serverless heroes. I was very into serverless and the serverless community. Still am, I guess. And I got really involved with kind of trying to help that community get their head around, which at that time was kind of cutting edge technology. And that really lighted a fire in me for trying to help people understand these, what are sometimes arcane and unusual technologies in straightforward or maybe even entertaining ways. And so you mentioned some of the songs I like to do. I draw cartoons and try to just help people laugh and learn a little bit at the same time. And then I also try to put technology in formats where people can access it without feeling like they have to jump through a lot of hoops. And the Cloud Resume Challenge is an example of that. The Cloud Resume Challenge is something that I started a couple of years ago as a way to help people that are brand new, not just to cloud, but to technology in general, feel like they can just strip out the extraneous fluff and start learning, start getting hands-on, start building earlier, start learning like an engineer. Engineers typically learn without, maybe like watching a ton of videos. They like to get hands-on earlier. They like to reach over and tap someone on the shoulder when they have questions. So there's a big, very active community, a Discord community associated with the Cloud Resume Challenge. We've seen wonderful success with that over the past couple of years, helping people transition into cloud roles from wherever they may have thought they were before.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of the Tech with Lucy community have come across the Cloud Resume Challenge before, and it's helped a lot of people with, putting their resume on the cloud and learning cloud services. And the good thing is today's conversation will not just be focused on AWS. So for those who are, also learning Azure or GCP, it's sort of like a cloud agnostic sort of conversation. The advice we provide will be relevant regardless of what cloud you're learning. So let me just pull up on the screen the slides. So as always, we have a list of the top 5 questions that we've collated that we think might be interesting for the conversation, but also open to any audience questions. So again, any questions, feel free to pop into the chat and we'll sort of switch between the questions on the screen and then also the questions from the audience. So Forrest, I'd like to start by asking you a really, really broad question, which is how do you gain hands-on experience with the cloud? And the reason I want to ask this is because when I first started learning cloud, the big focus was on getting certified and certifications. But it seems like everything has shifted now and people are realizing that certifications only get you so far because it's just, at the end of the day, a multiple choice a quiz or exam. So how do people actually go that extra step to get hands-on cloud experience in order to land a job in the cloud, which is why a lot of people are learning cloud in the first place?
It seems like a daunting question, doesn't it? When you look at the wealth of resources that are out there, the wealth of services that are out there, honestly, the wealth of cloud options that are out there now. I have made a cloud transition myself from being very involved in the AWS community, as I mentioned, to now working for Google Cloud, and have had to learn a whole new set of cloud capabilities. Some of them feel very, similar. They rhyme. Some of them feel very much like their own thing. And so I think one of the first questions that people ask themselves right at the beginning when they're trying to gain hands-on cloud experience is, which cloud should I even get hands-on with? And we get this question in the Cloud Resume Challenge community all the time. I'm sure you do too, Lucy. People saying, I see like there's AWS out there, there's Azure, there's Google Cloud. I'm a total beginner. I don't have, I'm not working at a company where I have access to one of these specific clouds. So which one do I choose? And what I always tell people is, the more important thing is to start with something. If you're junior, you're brand new, you don't have any external force weighing you toward one particular cloud provider, it's more important to get hands-on with something than be kind of paralyzed with decision fatigue trying to pick the perfect cloud. All three of these big major cloud providers have large communities, they have lots of job opportunities, and like I said, a lot of those skills transfer pretty well anyway. Sometimes I like to joke with people and say, there's probably not a hiring manager out there who's going to say, oh, well, you have no professional experience in Azure, but what we were really looking for is someone with no professional experience in AWS. See what I mean? It's like when you don't have that job experience to bring in, it's almost like it doesn't matter so much what you have on your resume. But that said, there are a few considerations you might want to look at. Certain clouds maybe have more of a presence in certain geographical regions. So if you look around you in the country that you're in and you see, well, there's a lot of Google Cloud here, well, then maybe it's smart for you to familiarize yourself with Google Cloud. But again, I don't really think you can go wrong with any of the three cloud providers as a junior. What's much more important is just to pick something and dive in and start building skills. And so with that said, how do you actually do that? Once you've picked a cloud you want to jump in on, how do you actually gain hands-on experience with that cloud? I have nothing against certifications. I used to work for a large training education provider that was mostly identified with its certification prep material. That would be A Cloud Guru, which is now part of Pluralsight. And so I have a lot of experience working with people that are in it for the certifications, and I don't have any problem with certifications. I think they're an important part of cloud learning. The Cloud Resume Challenge actually asks you to get a cert as part of the project that you do. I think it's a great way to get a fundamental overview, and if you're brand new to cloud, I think it's a great idea to start with maybe like the foundational level certification. So for AWS, that could be the Certified Cloud Practitioner. For Azure, it could be the AZ900. For Google Cloud, it will be the Cloud Digital Leader. Those are not technical certs that are going to look real impressive on a resume to a hiring manager. But if you're completely brand new to cloud, they're going to give you terminology and help you at least feel like you're a little bit conversant with the world you're about to step into. So that would be my pre-learning step before I get hands-on. But once you have done that, I would right away start looking for some projects to do. And maybe that moves us a little bit into the second question. But before I talk about specific cloud projects, I want to address one other thing, which is people ask, well, is the only way I can get hands-on cloud experience to like go do labs that are associated with maybe a training provider? Or should I go and do maybe some kind of hands-on side project on my own? Or should I try and do like freelance work or contracting or something, right? What's going to be the best thing for me to do? All of this is going to be situation dependent. I'm not going to give totally general advice here, but I would say maybe the effectiveness, the value of projects you're going to do is going to be ranked in a hierarchy. So like a hello world tutorial where, yes, quote unquote, I'm hands-on, but I'm just typing in commands that someone else has written down in a blog for me, or I'm just copy pasting, I'm clicking. That's going to be the least valuable thing you can do. It's fine to start. And honestly, even a lot of professional engineers, when they're doing something brand new, they might run through a hello world tutorial as their first step. That's a great way to get familiar with the technology. But that's not where the real learning comes. The real learning comes when you start pushing yourself up against things that the solution's not explained for you and sitting there in a document, where you're going to have to open some search tabs and you're going to have to go down some rabbit holes and you're going to encounter some error messages that are going to frustrate you and you're going to beat your head against them a little bit. That's where real learning comes, kind of that baptism by fire, because when you do find the solution and you find it on your own, based on your own learning and research, it's going to stick with you much better. It's going to come up better in job interviews. That's hard-won experience at that point. So I would, as soon as possible, start pushing yourself yourself toward projects where you're learning in ways that are a little bit self-directed and where you're solving problems where the answer is not already provided in a pre-packaged format for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, starting off with the foundations of potentially getting certifications, going through a few guided hands-on labs, and then, try and be on your own for a little bit, try and create something that maybe hasn't been created before or doesn't have like an exact blueprint you can follow step by
Mhm.
step, and just experience the struggles, right, of trying to build something, it not working, and then trying to figure out the reasons why.
Yes.
Really good advice there. We have a question from the chat, kind of similar to question number 2 on the screen, which is how do you gain access to projects hands-on? So this person is planning to take the solutions architect exam soon, which I
Mhm.
think is a good time to start, doing cloud projects, like after doing the certifications, because that will give you that foundational understanding of what are these services and how they can be used.
Yes.
So yeah, should we jump straight into question number 2 then, which is advice and resources for cloud projects?
Yeah.
How would you like to sort of address this?
Sure, and I guess we've already started getting into it a little bit, talking about trying to choose cloud projects where the more of the learning comes from you, where you're not just following someone else's cut and dried set of instructions. But along with that comes a caveat, which is you can get way off in the weeds with some project, and you can go, I don't know how I got myself into this mess. I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. And now I feel very frustrated and disillusioned, and I just want to walk away from the whole thing entirely. So that's not where you want to be. And to avoid that, it's very important that you place yourself in a community so that you don't get too stuck. Believe it or not, knowing when and how to ask for help is actually a really, really important job skill, right? If you're learning cloud for professional development purposes, you're not in a school context. There's no cheating here, right? It's not like you somehow lose points if you go and ask for help. In the professional world, when you're on the job, you are likely not going to be a solo cowboy out there slinging code all by yourself. You're going to be part of a team, and you're going to be judged on your ability to solve problems quickly and collaboratively, not independently. So it's to your advantage to know how and when to escalate a problem, how long to beat your head against it before you realize, okay, yeah, I'm really stuck. I need to go get somebody else to look over my shoulder for 5 minutes. That's a very, very important, very valuable skill. And the way to develop that outside of the work world, again, is to build in community, to have other people around you that are working on the same kind of projects, maybe similar career stage to you, and that you can ask questions of, that you can bounce your code off, that you can ask architecture design questions, get code review. Super, super important. Cloud Resume Challenge has a Discord community that does very well in that respect. Google Cloud actually has a Discord community as well that you can join. I know AWS has Discord communities and Slack communities as well. And then there's others that are not affiliated with one of the cloud providers that you can find. Oftentimes they're associated with different like training companies or training providers. A Cloud Guru launched a Discord server when I was there. As far as I know, it's still active and thriving. So look for communities like that where you can plug yourself in. That's really my top piece of advice, because doing cloud projects on your own, the right kind of cloud projects, the good kind of cloud projects, the tough kind of cloud projects, that is not anything that anyone wants to undertake alone for a long period of time. That's way too lonely. Find your people and keep them close to you. You will learn much faster. You'll grow much faster. I guess those are some resources as well. Resources for actually what cloud projects to do probably would be the next question. So we've mentioned the Cloud Resume Challenge a bunch of times. You can go to cloudresumechallenge.dev. It is freely available. You can try it there. And I always recommend this to people when they start, well, because I wrote it for people that are just starting out. It pulls a lot of skills into one project. If you do the Cloud Resume Challenge, you're going to get some experience building a front-end static website. You're going to get some experience with authentication. You're going to get some experience with cloud networking. You're going to get some experience building a serverless API. You're going to get some experience working with databases. You're going to get some experience working with infrastructure as code, with source control, with CICD, a lot of the operational as well as the development things that you need to know to be a cloud developer, or really maybe more of like a solutions architect, DevOps engineer, whatever you might say. A lot of people that complete the Cloud Resume Challenge go on into roles like that. There is a book associated with the Cloud Resume Challenge that I think Lucy might have like a discount code for, linked in this chat. And that book also contains some additional project mods if you want to get more into security security, or you're going for more of a developer role, or you're going for more of a DevOps role, things that you can actually build right onto your core Cloud Resume Challenge project, but just help you practice and learn specific skills to tailor you for the kind of job you want. So that's the project I always encourage people to start with. And you can reach out to me personally anytime if you have questions about that or need help getting started. You can do it on AWS, on Azure, or on Google Cloud. There's separate instructions provided for free on the website for each of those clouds. Other projects you can do, like I said, I used to work for A Cloud Guru, which is now part of Pluralsight. They have a whole raft of different projects that are kind of in the spirit of the Cloud Resume Challenge. And I actually link a bunch of those on the Cloud Resume Challenge website as well. If you go to the resources page, you'll find projects that will get you deeper with Google Cloud, with AWS, with Azure. And they still use kind of that self-directed mode of learning, but they'll range you a little farther afield in the type of things that you're working on. And so that's where I would start. Again, there's more cloud project opportunities coming out all the time. Andrew Brown, who's another cloud educator, I've seen he's got some kind of cloud project boot camp that seems to be floating around about to start. I don't know too much about that, but I do know that there's that type of value being created by other educators here in the cloud world. So keep your eyes open, join some communities. You're going to start seeing projects and opportunities float up.
Amazing. So follow-up question on that. People usually, they see some resources on cloud projects and they see that AWS, for example, has like workshops.aws as a link where people can, build projects that are more guided step by step.
Mm-hmm.
But then I get a question that's on, how many projects are enough? Like how much should I actually build? And like, what about the complexity of them? Like you mentioned, like a Hello World project probably wouldn't be enough for an employer perspective. So what do you think would be enough, let's say, for like an employer perspective and also just the number of projects to build? What would be your usual recommendation on this?
So let's be very real here. Getting hired in cloud without previous professional experience that's in cloud or close to cloud is a total crapshoot. There is no industry standard. There is no obvious on-ramp. There's no guaranteed set of things that interviewers are looking for. You are going to be throwing darts. You're going to be hoping that someone is on your wavelength and understands the need for apprenticeship and mentorship and can bring you on. I've met and worked with wonderful hiring managers who get that. And then I've also worked with what I call Cloud Resume champions, people who've completed the Cloud Resume Challenge, who spend months and months kind of beating their heads against the wall trying to apply for jobs. And they just get told over and over again things like, oh, you don't have a college degree, so the projects you did don't matter. Or why don't you go get some experience with help desk or something, and then maybe you can work your way up into cloud. So people hear that every day. I want to acknowledge that and be empathetic to it because it is super frustrating. I think it's a failure of the industry. I think we as an industry need to do a much, much better job of setting realistic expectations for what it means for entry-level developers to come in, what it means for them to pair with more senior developers so that they can ladder up those skills in a real hands-on experience type of environment. But until we get there, we just have to take the world as we find it, right? And try to hack it where we can, try to make ourselves as, show as much as we can that, we're the kind of person that's a smart investment, a smart risk to take for a hiring manager. That's what it means to apply for jobs with only projects on your resume. So your question was, how many of those projects do I need? I don't know that I am comfortable giving a number because I actually think that might be the wrong question for most of us to ask. Instead, I would say, think less about how many projects you have, because I could have 10 or 20 or 50 quote unquote projects on my resume or on my GitHub. But if they're toy projects or they're kind of inscrutable or they don't look like anything that you'd be likely to be doing on the job, like if I'm a hiring manager, I'm busy, I'm skimming through that. I don't really care. It's like, okay, so you automated your lights at home. All right, you did that. I don't know what that means for me in this job where we're doing data engineering. I don't really know how to process that, right? So people just gloss right over that kind of thing. Instead, I would focus more on the skills that you're learning through the projects. It's not about the quantity of the projects. It's you being able to come in and say, okay, look, the basic core building blocks of being a cloud engineer, so Linux, networking, you can write decent code in a programming language or two, you understand some cloud services and you've integrated some things together. As long as you have done enough projects to be able to show that, and it could be just one, it could be one mega project that you've added a lot of things onto over a little time. It could take you several to get there. But as long as you can show that set of capabilities, then the kind of hiring managers who are willing to take a chance on juniors will be willing to talk to you.
Yeah,
And let me
makes a lot
let
of
me
sense.
just say one follow-up thing there, Lucy, which is the
Yeah.
same question, how many projects I do, people also ask about certifications. They'll also ask, how many certifications should I get? And
Mm.
here I think there actually is a little bit more of an answer. And that is, uh, I think one or two, particularly one or two really good technical certs, like the solutions architect associate that someone in chat mentioned. That's great to have if you don't have other credentials, because it shows that you've got some awareness of the landscape and you've got some ability to follow through and study for a cert. But if you find yourself getting like a bunch of professional or specialty level certifications and you don't have any experience yet, I think you might be wasting your time. I think that time maybe could be better spent getting more hands-on. You don't want to get in a position where it's like, okay, this person knows some things maybe, but they haven't actually done anything, right? You don't want to be all academics and no application. So one or two really solid foundational technical certs, and then project work. That's where I always encourage people to focus. And then you can be continuing to go on and get advanced certs. There's nothing wrong with advanced certs, but like apply for jobs while you're doing that. Don't wait to get a bunch of advanced certs before you start preparing yourself to actually join the work world.
Yeah, that's the same advice I tell other people as well when they're like, should I get the solutions architect professional cert or should I start applying to jobs? But, it is going to be diminishing returns every time you do an additional cert after getting your solutions architect associate or, some of the associate ones.
Yeah.
But also depends, I guess, on what role you want to apply for. Like if your role is more focused on like networking or like security, potentially getting one of those certs might be helpful. But yeah, just for the sake of applying to like a cloud engineer or like a associate solutions architect role, then yeah, it's much better to focus that time doing additional projects as opposed to additional certs.
Right.
Uh,
Or maybe like not, I don't want people to get confused by additional projects. It could be just, beefing up a project that you have.
oh
It could be
yes,
adding
that's
more
right.
capabilities or maintaining, right? Keeping one project and then seeing how it breaks and how you need to fix it over time. Sometimes that's way more valuable than just going off and starting up a bunch of new toy projects. Because let's be real, maintaining code and maintaining legacy systems is 90% of the job at a lot of places you're going to be interviewing at.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the quality of the project versus just doing as many
Yes.
projects as possible.
Quality over quantity, for sure.
Yeah, that's the takeaway here. One question that I've been getting is how do you document and showcase your projects? Because I've made a few videos on project ideas and I've told people that they can add it onto their resume, but then people are like, how do I do that? And, should I be documenting on GitHub? Should I write a blog about it? What are your thoughts and what have you seen work well with people who, go on to showcase their projects, maybe from like just like from their own perspective of learning, but also from an employer perspective, like what would they like to see? Like how would they like to see your projects being documented?
I think this is such a good question. The first thing to remember is, and I kind of alluded to this when talking about hiring managers that might be scrolling through your GitHub and just glaze over. All of us are attention strapped. We have too many things to pay attention to and not enough time. And when you're applying for a job, you are one voice in a huge sea of voices that all have things they're trying to say. So it's to your advantage to find a way to cut through that noise. And usually that's accomplished by doing less in terms of the great quantity of stuff that you throw out there into the world. And it's more about having a small number of really attention getting things that you lean into. And what I always encourage Cloud Resume challengers to do, because the last step of the project is actually to write a blog about your experiences. And I always encourage them to find an angle, to find a hook on that really encapsulates what's unique about them and what they did. We have a lot of people coming through the Cloud Resume Challenge from really interesting, unique backgrounds. And I bring up all kinds of stories about this. A lot of people have heard the story of Daniel Singletary, the commercial plumber who came through the Cloud Resume Challenge. Just recently in the past, we do monthly sprints. In the December sprint, we had someone coming through the challenge who has spent a number of years as a miner. He does construction underground in mines every day. So this is a person who's actually physically laying pipes a lot of the time. And now all of a sudden he's laying CICD pipelines instead of PC.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. If I'm a hiring manager, I want to know about that. I want to know what someone who has been working on physical infrastructure for their entire career thinks about working with digital infrastructure. There's actually a lot to be gleaned from that. And that communicates to me, again, as a hiring manager, that this is someone who, even though they don't have cloud experience, brings real world ops skills that could be advantageous to my team now or very soon.
Yeah.
So if I'm that guy, if I'm the miner who's completed the Cloud Resume Challenge, if I write my blog, like, it doesn't need to be this 2,000 word thing telling about every YAML error that I overcame. The story is, hey, I am an experienced physical infrastructure wielder. And also, look, I can wrangle YAML too, right? That's very interesting. So find a way to tell that in a few words. Make a diagram, show what you built so people can see that at a glance. So just trying to, I'm not saying to dumb it down, but I'm saying to find a way in napkin or thumbnail fashion to express what you did and why it matters. And sometimes that means just ruthlessly stripping things out. But the people that I've seen go on and be successful and get hired out of the Cloud Resume Challenge, oftentimes that's something that they're good at doing. So when you showcase your projects, don't think quantity. Again, think quality. Think, what's the unique thing here? What's the nugget of information that I really want people to take away? What's the headline, right? And then, blog about it, put it on your LinkedIn, tweet it if you're comfortable being on Twitter. Just less is more. And that seems to work well for people.
Yeah, that's a really interesting example that you provided. It's sort of like connecting the dots between their previous experiences versus now, and then it's kind of like all of this is going to be relevant. Which brings us to another question. It's sort of similar in that, like, we talked about skills potentially from previous employment or like previous situations could be relevant to where you're going into for your next step in your career. Someone's asking, should you learn multi-cloud or focus on one or be better at it? So I think that's sort of relevant to our conversation because we're talking about like transferable skills, whether one cloud's transferable to the other. But I have seen a debate on this recently on like LinkedIn where people kind of have different perspectives on should you get the Google Digital Cloud Leader and then AWS Cloud Practitioner as your fundamentals, like all three, or should you focus on one and go deep? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, if you're brand new and don't have any experience one way or the other, start with one. It's enough to think about one without trying to bring multiple into the mix. You're not going to be more attractive with no experience on two clouds than you are with no experience on one cloud, I don't think. Once you become a professional working engineer, I do think there's some advantage to having awareness of the space beyond just the one cloud you might be working on your day-to-day. I actually wrote an article about this for the Google Cloud blog maybe about a year ago, and maybe we can find that link and put it in the show notes afterwards. But my point in that article was, hey, if you're actively working in cloud now, it's probably the case that you're not working on a lot of applications that actively use two clouds at the same time. We don't see that kind of multi-cloud a lot in the industry. But what is likely is you're going to be working on an application that is primarily using one cloud, but you're going to need to make decisions based on a broader situational awareness of the landscape. This especially gets true as you move higher up in your career and you become an architect or you become a team lead and you start making like build versus buy decisions. You get pulled into a meeting with your VP or with your leadership and they say, hey, we heard that, Cloud X does this really well. Does that do it as well as the decision we made on this service on Cloud Y? It would be a good idea to know a little bit about both clouds. So I always recommend you get deep on one cloud. And that means being hands-on with it, building on it a lot, knowing the ins and outs, knowing, the weird little error messages and be able to speak at an expert level about that. That's tremendously valuable for your career. And then I recommend going broad on, I would say, one other cloud. I think two is better than one, but two is also better than three in this case. I think, it's just, some way you just can't hold it all in your head at all. But having some broad awareness of a second cloud, maybe through like an associate level technical certification, I think is really beneficial to your professional career. But just don't jump the gun on that. That's something to worry about after you get hired and have a base of knowledge to deepen. For right now, you just need to focus on, again, like I said, simplify, right? Don't create this confusion where you're mediocre on a lot of things. Just have a really clear story about this is the one thing that I'm good at. This is something I've worked hard on. This is what it means to me. This is why I'm unique.
Yeah, I personally haven't, done all like the certifications, foundational certifications for all the clouds, but I would imagine just if you start out, it would be really confusing if you just get the foundational ones for all of them. It just wouldn't all the services sort of just like mixed up in your head. It might be a bit confusing for beginners.
Yes.
Yeah. So a couple other questions from the chat. they want to ask about your opinion on cloud boot camps. And I know this is another topic where people are kind of like either, they feel really strongly about cloud boot camps or they feel really against it. Yeah, they want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know wonderful people in the industry who got their start from cloud boot camps or technical boot camps of some kind or another. So they have worked for people. In general, I urge people to be cautious when they're looking at boot camps. I think some of them are predatory, not all of them. I think some of them are fairly predatory. They make promises they can't really keep. And also, some of them they'll pursue that kind of learning that I was talking about earlier, where you get a lot of kind of rote facts that you learn, and then you go to look for jobs, and you haven't built some bigger skills about how to troubleshoot, how to consider situations that are outside of just these very prescribed, prepackaged things that you learned. So if you're in a boot camp and it's working well for you and you like it, great. Again, I know they've worked for people. Over time, I think, I don't know. I'm skeptical of the boot camp model. Some of the big boot camps have really, really struggled recently because, again, they've made promises to students that they really are not able to keep, at least not at scale. So I really think that the problem in the industry is on the demand side. It's teams not being set up to bring juniors in effectively. And I think boot camps struggle partly for that reason, even the good ones. So I'm much more interested in fixing the demand side, in helping teams be able to fight for and bring on junior headcount and know how to bring them up. Then whatever we have on the supply side, whether it's boot camps, whether it's certifications, whether it's these other kinds of learning initiatives like the Cloud Resume Challenge, all of that will be much more successful if the industry is meeting them halfway on the demand side. But before you give a ton of your money to a boot camp, do your research, make sure they really can back up the promises that they're making. Don't get scammed. That's a lot of your money and a lot of weeks of your life to spend doing something that's not going to help you more than just, being smart and working with a community.
Yeah, it is a big investment. I've sometimes seen it can go up to like $20,000 for like a 6-week program. So always do your research and, maybe compare a few, also compare, like understand your learning style, whether you need to have a community and like a structured program, or maybe you can go the self-taught route and then just go through the steps we sort of mentioned about getting certs and then projects next. But yeah, so this brings us to the common mistakes when learning cloud, because I know one of them is not doing enough research and just buying a bunch of courses or boot camps as a way to learn. But what are some other mistakes you've seen when people are learning cloud as a beginner?
Yeah, I think we've touched on some of them over the course of this conversation. And I want to be clear, nothing I'm going to say here is intended as, like trying to dunk on or be mean to people that are new. When you're new, of course you're going to make mistakes. And believe it or not, making mistakes is actually a really important part of learning cloud. If you're not making any mistakes, then you have nothing to learn from. So maybe the most common mistake when learning cloud is being afraid of making any mistakes. Go make a bunch of mistakes. You'll be a better person for it. Go deploy some stuff that doesn't work that well. Go build a project that has some problems. I hesitate to say this, but the first time you leave a cloud service running and you get a surprise bill, that's a mistake you're not going to forget very soon. I realize that can be a scary thing, and I don't mean to make light of the fact that people have panic attacks about that, but the cloud is a place where you can make mistakes, usually with pretty low consequences, because it's not a bunch of hardware you had to build. It's something you can shut down and spin up. One thing that I think people, and this is just along that same vein, one thing I think people do is they get into cloud and they start building things without thinking carefully about the costs that they're incurring, or how they're going to maintain and track these things so that they don't run into unexpected costs down the road. And something that can really help you with that when you're starting out is to try to use some kind of a cloud playground environment, so that even though you're building, you're in a little bit of a safety zone where you're not going to get hurt by a surprise bill. A Cloud Guru had those playgrounds when I was there. Google Cloud, through their Google Cloud Skills Boost offering, also has playgrounds. There's, again, other training providers and cloud providers that have something like that. So if you can swing it financially, because usually those things do come with like a fixed monthly cost of several dollars, I would look into maybe learning that way so that you don't expose your raw wallet to the power of the cloud before you know what you're doing a little bit better. I think that's probably a really important key thing to look at. If you have the Cloud Resume Challenge book, there's a bunch of sort of cloud hygiene tips that I provide in the beginning of that book, and that's certainly one of them. Others are, just making sure that you have a way to automatically spin stuff up and tear it down. Again, you're not going to run into a surprise bill usually if you clean up really well after yourself, and that means getting into infrastructure as code earlier instead of just clicking around in the console. That's something I would encourage people to do. Something else, and I've mentioned this before, a common mistake when learning cloud is to try to do it on your own. It's much easier, much better, much faster with a community of like-minded people. So please join a community earlier rather than later. Don't just float around on your own. You're going to do better with other people. That's just true of most things in life. And so, yeah, as long as you're with others, learning from others. One other thing I would say is, and again, this is something we've kind of covered, people oftentimes will go get a bunch of certifications. They will not do hands-on work, and then they'll just send out a bunch of resumes, and they'll be frustrated that they don't get any responses back. So something you can do, apart from just building hands-on, is to build in public and to start building on cloud services earlier, where there is a really active and excited community of practice. So this is not just about having a random cloud community, which maybe is what you took from what I said before. This is about saying, hey, I've noticed that, let's say, Google Cloud Vertex AI, which is a suite of AI services that Google Cloud provides. I've noticed there's a really, really interested and engaged community on those services. And there's a lot of people trying to hire people who work on Vertex AI. I should start putting out some little projects in that area. I should start putting some things on GitHub, writing some blogs about it. I should start connecting with other people that are doing that. And then next time there's a job opening in that area, they're going to think of me. So this is getting into networking, not the computer kind of networking, the people kind of networking. And that often ends up creating much better opportunities for you than, again, just sending out a bunch of random resumes into the ether and hoping that one of them comes back and you land in a good place. Remember that when you network, it's not just providing an opportunity for companies to evaluate you. It's also you evaluating companies. It's you being able to see, oh, here's a company over here that seems like they employ a bunch of people that I really like because I've interacted with them in the community. Those people seem happy. They don't seem like they're working 90 hours a week. That might be a good place for me to spend my time, right? Or I know they have this big initiative coming up and they've talked to me about it, and I'm excited about that opportunity even before I apply. So your common mistake people make is not getting plugged into the community and then just sort of being at the whims of the job market with wherever they end up getting placed. The better connections you build, the more opportunities are going to present themselves to you, and the earlier it's going to happen. Is it an investment of time? Yes. Is it more of an investment of time than spending like 4 years, going back to school? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that is something I want to dive a bit deeper into because, one way is to apply to jobs and submit your resume, but there's also this other side of the job space where people, recruiters are reaching out to, you're finding opportunities because you're building a personal brand. It's a lot of like incoming opportunities that come about when building a brand, adding value to the community. And I know you've done a really good job at that, regularly posting on LinkedIn and Twitter. And it's good for people, even if they're just not even actively on the job search, just for building a brand, for career growth, and just to meet others. But from a job seeker's perspective, do you have some examples you've seen where people have really tried to build up their brand as someone who is looking for a role in this industry and then has like XYZ skills? Is that something you've seen, like some good examples you can share?
Yeah, I have. And it's always interesting because what ends up happening is you're a unique person. And so the skills and interests you have oftentimes are going to open up an opportunity for you that may be very tailored specifically to what you do and what you like. I think about this guy, I think his name is Riley Goodside, who was recently hired at Scale.ai as a staff prompt engineer, because he had kind of invented this field of prompt engineering through the like hacking Chat GPT and other things, trying to give it, wayward input to make it do unusual things. That was just something he got interested in and was sharing, and he ended up inventing a whole new discipline. That job title, that opportunity didn't exist before he created it for himself. And if that feels like, oh, well, I am not advanced enough to create something like that, I'm not saying you have to invent something out of thin air, but like, if you're working on an emergent thing, like to use the AWS world as an example, I've seen some people get really into the AWS CDK, which is a programming language based infrastructure as code solution. And there's a lot of interest in, but there's not a ton of people who are really experts in that. That's something you can get good at just on your laptop. And then, the more you get plugged into that, the more you may find a company saying, we need someone that does that. We don't have anybody who's really good at that. Would you like to come be that person for us? So it's almost like don't index yourself off what other people are doing, because that's them. That's their unique thing that they're good at. Find what you enjoy, and 6 months down the road, opportunities are going to open up that you would never have imagined. That's how my career has unfolded. I wouldn't, the job I have at Google Cloud didn't really exist before I was there. I kind of worked my way into it, and those little holes in the universe will open up that are exactly your size and shape. You just have to kind of put yourself out there and discover who you want to be as you're going along. That's both the most trite and I think the most profound advice probably that I can give on that subject.
Yeah, there's no exact roadmap or blueprint for like how to build a personal brand. It's usually quite broad. So yeah, good advice over there. You mentioned your role at Google, and that's something we haven't talked about yet. So for those who are curious, do you want to explain what you do at Google, as head of developer media?
Yeah, my job title there is head of developer media now, which is it's kind of a made up title, but as I say, aren't all job titles made up? So what I'm doing is I'm trying to help educate our community and the cloud community more broadly about both what Google Cloud is doing and the great technologies we're creating and releasing, but also just to help them become better cloud developers and whatever their niche in the cloud world is. Help them find that niche, help them connect with resources that will help them do that more effectively and efficiently. We tend to create a lot of really fun, interesting content. So you can follow the Google Cloud channels if you want to get a sneak peek at some things we've got coming out soon. But yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to just kind of keep my finger on the pulse of the community, learn from them, share resources with them. And yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. I'm just looking at the chat, and we have a few more questions coming in that are more specific towards certain services. Someone is asking how they can learn how to use CI/CD pipelines. I think you can see the question as well, right?
Yes, I can.
I'm not exactly sure about the question, but yeah, if you can provide some advice, that would be great.
Yeah, so asking just how to get more experience using CI/CD, like CloudFormation, which is AWS's infrastructure as code service, or Terraform, which is an open source alternative created by a company called HashiCorp. And there's other tools and services out there too that fit at different points on the CI/CD chain. So where can I learn how to use them? So he mentions one template that he's used, or he or she, I don't know who's saying this, and still can't land an interview. Again, there's so little context in that question that's hard for me to know. I mean, is CI/CD the problem here? I don't know if that is the case or not. Right? Is that really the missing piece for you? I don't know that it is. But if what you're really looking for is just to get more hands-on experience with CI/CD, you could come do the Cloud Resume Challenge. There's actually a Terraform mod for the challenge that's accessible freely on the website, where you can kind of take the default spec and you can morph it to use all Terraform services. So I would recommend giving that a try. If you want to get more involved with infrastructure as code in general, there are some interesting communities. I know the AWS CDK community. I think they have like presentation days, that you could go and get involved with. But again, I think it just comes down to practice, building some projects and actually building some templates, and not just copy pasting an existing template, but writing some stuff from scratch, beating your head against it, figuring out where you made a mistake, and then trying it again. So Cloud Resume Challenge might be a nice next step, because there's a lot of infrastructure as code in that project.
Yeah, and I think from a job search perspective, maybe try implement some of the tips we mentioned today with personal branding. Like maybe write a blog on what you've built and then sharing that on LinkedIn. Those could be some other ways to help you land that interview and maybe, push you towards closer to the role you want to apply for. But yeah, if you want to share some more context as well, just feel free to in the chat.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, they just did. So
There you go. Yeah.
let's
So,
have a
okay.
read there.
Yeah, I would, yeah, if just what you need is, you know, you have a gap there, you know, you have a hole you need to fill it, come do the Cloud Resume Challenge and focus on the IAC pieces. You can automate every single one of those 16 steps. And by the time you get to the end of that, at least you'll know more of what you don't know. That would be my
Mhm.
suggestion.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, And I'm just looking at the time. We have time for a few more questions, but I'd like to cover 2023 cloud trends
Mhm.
because I think this will be useful with people who are wondering what should I learn in 2023? Is there an
Yeah.
area of cloud to look out for? And just maybe, yeah, I know a lot of people watching are looking to land a job in the cloud.
Yeah.
Are there anything specific to 2023, given the market conditions, uh, that could be good to keep an eye out on?
Yes. So keep in mind, whatever we say the trends for 2023 are, a lot of companies, particularly a lot of larger companies, they're still catching up with the trends from 2013, right? So there's this really fat tail of work on just really basic bread and butter cloud skills like automation and being able to do cloud networking and doing cloud migrations, and all of that is just
Mhm.
really, really nuts and bolts work that needs to be done, and there's lots of opportunities to do it. So don't be too discouraged because you're not working on the quote unquote latest and greatest 2023 cloud trend. But some things that I do see being really, really impactful and interesting for the current year. One of them is software supply chain security. If you're interested in anything in the
Mm.
security space, or even if you're just in the cloud development or like platform engineering space, I would get familiar with what this is. Google Cloud has really done a lot of work to try to advocate for best practices here. If you want to know what software supply chain security, or S3C, is, some good places to start would be salsa.dev. That's spelled SLSA.dev. I'll put it in chat here. And that's a place where Google and a bunch of other partners have laid out some things you can do to help protect your code on the way to production as it goes through build stages and source stages and packaging stages. And there's some clear diagrams there to help you understand what they're talking about. And I would dig in then from there to learn more about how you can protect specific aspects of your supply chain and learn some of the tools that are available to help you with that. I think AI is going to be a major trend. We're already seeing it, right? We mentioned ChatGPT even in this call as well. And you're going to see, I think, all the cloud providers, really scrambling to show what they have and to differentiate. So if you are not familiar with using cloud AI services in a project, now might be a great time to pick a project that involves some of that. Again, Google Cloud, because I work there, I'll shout them out. They have a great suite of services to help with that, Vertex AI and others. So that would be a really, really great thing to put into a cloud project this year. And I think beyond that, it's just, I mentioned platform engineering in passing a moment ago, but I think that's a strong trend. You're seeing more cloud teams consolidating around having software developers who are writing applications. Then they have these platform teams who are creating layers of infrastructure that these applications run on. And this is kind of the next evolution of the quote unquote DevOps or infra ops world that we've had the last few years. So learn what platform engineering is, what the components of it are, see what gaps on that might be missing in your resume, and then work on plugging those.
Yeah, good point with the, not all the companies are up to date with the latest cloud trends. So there will still be demand on
Mhm.
a lot of things. You mentioned like back in 2013, like I
Mhm.
think just like maybe like migrating something like an on-premises server onto the cloud. That's
Mhm.
something that a lot of companies are still looking to do. So I wanted to ask, still on the topic of cloud trends,
Mhm.
people have asked me, are there specific roles in cloud that will be particularly in demand for 2023, or maybe roles that,
Mhm.
yeah, or on the flip side, roles to not look out for?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned a minute ago, Lucy, this is a weird year for tech. There's certainly a downturn. We're seeing lots and lots of layoffs across the industry. And so I think something that I've heard anecdotally has been an area of cuts has been like internal tooling teams, which makes sense, right? If you're working on something that's not directly making money for customers, you're probably going to be seen as less integral to the business. So if you're looking for a role, you're evaluating resumes and you have the luxury of choosing which job you'd like to have, it might be a good idea to just really bias for taking a role that directly supports code that is making money for the company. So if you're like 7 teams deep from the customer and you're working on some internal tool that enables another tool, I'm not saying that work's not important, but that may be harder to justify when the company starts looking at cuts. So with that said, roles that I think are continuing to be in high demand, certainly data engineering. So being able to work with the pipelines that get data out of databases and into other applications where it can be sliced and diced. It continues to be an area of great need. Obviously, AI and anything related to being able to integrate AI services into applications is big. And yeah, we continue to see just strong need for the bread and butter roles of security and platform engineering, and honestly, software development as well.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on maybe like sales-based roles, like solutions architects?
Yeah.
Yeah, like sales development reps.
Right, and sometimes people don't, associate these with cloud engineering. But of course, you're absolutely right. Solutions architects do a lot of hands-on work. At Google Cloud, we have something called customer engineers, and they are a little bit more on the sales side, but they are very, very technical, very hands-on with code and with cloud. And yeah, I mean, it just a lot of companies are trying to angle for profitability this year, from what I've seen and heard, and that may affect their growth budget, which may affect roles on like the sales and marketing side. So I would be aware of that, but that's getting a little bit out over my skis in terms of understanding exactly how all those complicated dynamics are at play.
Yeah. And I think for cloud learners, it's sort of, you can pivot between different roles. You don't have to be like, I want to become a solutions architect and that's it. Like a lot of the skills you learn through projects and certifications could be relevant in other areas. And that could be, trying to do more projects on a specific topic that you see like has like an open role for. So I think maybe the takeaway would just be to keep an open mind. 2023, I guess it's like it's hard to tell maybe even at this point like what roles would be like particularly in demand, but we did mention a few just then. But yeah, I guess just be open to any sort of role where you can get to use your cloud skills. So we're closing in on the hour now, Forrest. But I usually like to ask people what is their biggest advice they have for the viewers. We have 105 people watching at the moment, and I know a lot of people would be interested in replaying this, or people who aren't able to make it live who will be watching this recording. What advice would you have for them? Like, I think people here are mainly job seekers, or potentially people who are in already in a cloud role, like let's say like a cloud engineer role, but looking to progress their career into becoming like, for example, a solutions architect, cloud architect, and they're just looking at using hands-on skills as a way to further their career.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to narrow it down to one, but can I give two?
Sure.
So the first one is learn to code. Whether you are brand new to cloud, whether you are in a technical role of some kind, but you're not really doing a lot of hands-on programming day to day, learn to code. It's going to open a lot of doors for you. You will not regret doing it, I promise. Hey, with things like GitHub Copilot, it's easier to get a lot of code written than ever. So learn to code. It will be a tremendous force multiplier and value add for your career. Second thing, and I said this earlier, is just be yourself. And that means being authentically yourself. It means being the most well-rounded version of yourself. It means being the most empathetic version of yourself. That's both the most trite and the most profound advice that I can give you, because ultimately, lots of things get automated away every day, but what's not going to get automated away is someone who understands the business, understands who they are, understands what they like, and is willing to grow and adapt in order to just keep seeking that true version themselves. So don't lose heart. If you're having trouble finding a job opportunity right now, just continue to put yourself out there, continue to grow in your understanding of what you want to do. And I genuinely do believe that you've got a bright future, because I've seen it over and over and over again.
Yeah, mindset is a big part of this as well. Just stay optimistic and, don't give up too early. Be resilient and focus on your learning and applying those skills. Really good takeaways there. I'll just put the link to your LinkedIn profile. Also your Twitter as well. One second. So people can connect with you and follow you along your journey with, providing advice to cloud learners. And Cool. Okay. I think, yeah, this brings us to time. So that's all the time we have left. But thank you so much, Forrest, for adding so much value to the Tech with Lucy community. A lot of the advice has been super helpful. And I learned a lot of things as well from this chat. So thank you so much. And for everyone who's tuning in at the moment live, we really appreciate it. And for those who are watching this recording, if you have any questions, just leave it in the comments, and I'll try to get back to as many people as I can. But yeah, thank you so much, Forrest. We'll speak soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Lucy. Wonderful to be here.
All right, bye.